Hi everybody, I'm Joey Paul and I'm an indie author and welcome back to my channel. I write young adult fiction across a variety of genres, and if you think that might interest you, then think about subscribing below. So the last few videos that I did in this series have done well, so I thought I would do another one and talk about drafting while being chronically ill and or disabled. I will link the playlist for the other videos up in the cards. As usual, the same disclaimer, I am far from the only chronically ill and or disabled authortuber, so keep that in mind. I also can only talk about what worked for me and how I've adapted through my chronic illnesses and disabilities. Your results and conditions and such may vary. Number 1. You can only go at your own pace. This is something I think needs to be said so much. Too often there's this idea that everyone writes at the same pace, whether abled or not, and that everyone is competing with everyone else. You can only go at your own pace, and that's just the way it is. If you're someone with a chronic illness or disability, then you have limitations on yourself that other abled writers might not have. It's so very important that you remember this when you're working through your drafts. Like for me, it's taken me a really long time to get to the point where I'm able to draft at the speed I do, and even then, it's hit or miss as to whether everything goes to plan. You might find that there are some days or weeks or months where everything is going smoothly, and then something will happen that throws a wrench in the works. At the end of the day, you can only do as much as you personally can do, and comparing your pace to someone else, whether they have the same conditions or not, is only going to make you feel worse, or it's going to push you into a flare, which no one wants. You've got to work at your own pace and not someone else's, and while it can be hard to not do the comparison game, it really isn't worth your health to push yourself to achieve at somebody else's pace. That's all there is to it. Number 2. Word count is not everything. I know that I can be guilty of this as much as the next person. I track everything from time worked on a project to pages to chapters to word count. It works for me, and I find that it really helps to keep me centered on my goals and what I'm hoping to achieve. But it's not the be-all and end-all of drafting. Like I just said, you've got to work at your own pace, and while my pace may seem really fast, for someone else it's really slow, and that leads into word count. Sometimes you can write a massive amount of words and feel like, boom, achievement unlocked. And you'll go back and read them and think, these are not great words. And other times you can have a really slow week or month or whatever and think, actually these words are really good. It can go either way, and focusing on word count as a way to achieve can really blow up in your face. You don't need to be writing X amount of words to be considered valid. You don't need to be achieving a certain baseline to be valid as a writer. It comes in many forms when drafting, and it's okay if lots of words are not your way of doing things. And it's okay if it takes you a really long time to get the words that you do. And it's okay if it doesn't as well. You are not defined by the amount of words you write in any given session, and you are valid as a writer no matter how small or big your word count is. You just gotta keep writing. Number 3. Sometimes you will need a long break, and that's okay. This is something I wish someone had told me when I first started writing. Back then I thought I had failed when I wrote a book or two and then needed a really long break before being able to finish a draft. It wasn't so much about not having the ideas, but more that I was just exhausted. Now, back then I hadn't heard of things like burnout and the like. I was newly disabled and struggling with my symptoms and how to balance everything. But the same is still true today. There are still times when I need to take a break. There are times when you all need to take a break, and while living in times where it seems like productivity is tied to worth, it can be a hard thing to do. It can also be the right thing to do. This applies to abled writers as well. They will need to take breaks too. It might feel impossible and feel like you're wasting time, but the truth is we all need breaks from time to time. The most important thing is making sure you aren't pushing yourself to breaking point or past burnout and into something even worse. So if it means you need to take a break from drafting, whether it's a day or week or longer, be sure that you know when to take it and how to look after yourself, because that is very, very important. When you're chronically ill and or disabled, it can be really easy to try and push yourself beyond your limits, which I will talk about in a moment, and it's even more important to try and take care of yourself as well. So if you need that break, take it and come back to your drafting refreshed and ready to start again. Number 4. There will be highs and lows and everything in between. As with most things in life and in drafting, there will be times when you're riding out the waves and times when you're hitting rock bottom with your story. There will also be times when you're coasting along, feeling right there in the middle. I think this especially applies when you're chronically ill and or disabled, because you're having to deal with symptoms and all the bits and pieces that go along with them. There are going to be times when you're in the midst of the best writing session ever and you're trying to push to keep going, but your body is going to have a little white flag and wave it, and you'll have no choice but to call it quits. Which, speaking from experience, sucks, but it's also something you have to get used to and listen to. So while there are going to be those highs, we also got to talk about the lows. The times when it feels like you are never going to finish and nothing is working and all of it is just crap. It can be tempting to chase the highs, but the lows are the times when you're really going to want to throw in the towel. Whether that's because of symptoms or burnout or just not being able to think straight, it does happen to all of us. Even the abled writers have these lows. It's just that sometimes they're fewer between and other times they don't seem to have as much impact on them. I promise you that there have been some really low lows for me in the past year or so, and there have been times when I thought about throwing in the towel. But it's something you do get better at navigating. Make sure you are checking in with your support, getting enough sleep and the like, and also taking care of yourself. And if possible, ride out the lows and get back to coasting along. Now, it might sound like coasting is the bad thing. It's not. You can write plenty while not in the midst of the highs. It's one of the things that gets books written, at least for me it is, because the highs don't seem to hit for very long, and then it's a case of having to put butt in chair and actually coast along right through writing your draft. You will get through it, and it will get better. And number 5. Know your limits. This is one that I had to include because too often you'll hear the advice to push through. People tell you to set goals that will push you to the brink, and while that has its place in that some goals should be a bit of a stretch for you to reach, it's not the be all and end all here. You are someone with a chronic illness and or disability. You will have limits on what you can achieve. I don't mean that therefore you shouldn't try or that you're not capable. I just mean that there are going to be some things that are harder or out of reach for you, and that's completely okay. So when you're sitting down to plan your time or sitting down to write, keep in mind that having limits is not a bad thing. It doesn't make you less valid or less capable. It just means that you will have to go at your own pace, and that's completely okay. There's one thing I've learned over the years of writing, and that's just how easy it can be to push yourself past those limits and end up in a flare or the like that takes away from drafting time. It's not a bad thing to need to pace yourself, and you can still be an author, a writer, and still keep in mind those limits. Just remember to take care of yourself, because that's the important thing. So there we go. Those are my thoughts on drafting while chronically ill. As usual, like I said at the start, these don't apply to absolutely everybody, and these are only my thoughts and my experiences, and I can only talk about them. But I do hope that it helps. So what's one thing that you've learned while being chronically ill and trying to draft? Do you have any tips? If so, let me know in the comments down below. So that's all I've got time for today. If you want to support my channel, you can comment, like, or subscribe. I post new videos on Thursdays. You can find me all over social media, and my books are available everywhere, and you can also sign up for my newsletter. And don't forget to pick up Crime and Chronicles: The Second Pang, which is the second in a young adult urban fantasy series. And also don't forget to grab a ticket for the city in Birmingham in July, where I'll be signing books. All the links to which are listed below. Thanks for watching, and remember to keep writing. Bye.